Sir James Galway is widely regarded as the greatest flute player of the 20th century.
It's really difficult to know what separates the geniuses from the rest. All I know is that for some reason, he's on this planet to do good.
With James Galway, there is a rare confluence of tremendous skill and ability. You talk to flutists, and whether they like the way he plays or not, they will say he is a phenomenon. He is so gifted. He has such a facility with the instrument that it's just extraordinary.
Galway has the complete package, not just as a musician, but as a communicator. He really tells it like it is. He's somebody who I think anybody can relate to.
His crossover into the world of pop music shocked his peers, but made him a global superstar.
James Galway has crossed all those frontiers and gone beyond because he's a world musician. There are not too many of them, but he's a world musician.
This is the story of the boy from Belfast who shook up the classical music world and won.
That sort of love, he's in love with it, and he has always been. This is the great love affair, and he can't leave it alone. He's infatuated with it. His last breath will be blowing a flute.
I'm not sure how many flutes I have. I'd have to have a look at the insurance docket. They're all insured, and normally we shove them in the bank, but we got them out especially for you. And this is where we keep them when they're here in the house. And this one, I believe, is 24 carat.
Known to friends and family as Jimmy, Galway has made Switzerland his home for the past 40 years. He's been married 3 times and has 4 grown-up children. For the last 20 years, Galway and his third wife, Jeannie, have lived in Megan. Their beautiful house overlooks Lake Lucerne, a long way from the streets of his childhood. Galway was born in Belfast in 1939 at the outbreak of the Second World War. He was the eldest of 2 sons. His father found occasional work at the shipyard, and his mother was a winder in the local spinning mill. Both parents shared a love of music.
The music business was in our family. My mother played the piano, and my dad played the piano, accordion, and the flute, of course. My dad was really very passionate about Strauss waltzes. Sometimes I wondered if I was living in Belfast or Vienna, because my dad was playing all these waltzes on the accordion, and my mum played on the piano. This is my dad. But I never thought about this before. I wonder if this is the bandmaster who would be my grandfather. My granddad was the flute player in the family at the time. He was the teacher or the bandmaster of a big band called the Apprentice Boys. But they ceased to function when Adolf threw a bomb on their band room, and that was the end of that. I decided I was going to learn the flute, but I wasn't going to learn it from my dad, because at the age of 9, I thought I was 15 and was not talking to my dad. And so I learned it with my Uncle Joe, which was a much nicer experience.
From very early age, James Galway was an extraordinary boy. I mean, he was this boy in a very working class, honourably poor background. But he just wanted to play. Well, that's odd, to be as dedicated to it. Not football, not knocking around. He wanted to play, he wanted to talk with his pals, but what did he want to talk about? Music.
The first stage when I learned with my Uncle Joe, he taught me all the marching band tunes, you know, the first flute bands that we played in Belfast. And that was like the beginning for me. I thought this was great, you know, get out there and play the flute with all these drums and stuff.
The 1950s was a quiet time politically in Northern Ireland, and the flute band scene gave hundreds of young boys like Jimmy an opportunity to develop their musical skills.
Saturday was always a big day because there we were free. One day we were walking down the high street and we saw this notice and it said Atlantic Records. So we went in. The proprietor, owner and promoter was Solly Lipchitz. And Solly took one look at us and said, "What are you guys doing?" And he said, "Oh, we're just looking around." He said, "What?" And immediately he said, "Well, what do you play?" I don't know why he knew we played anything. And we all said, "We play the flute." And he said, "Okay, sit down, I'll play your record." So he played us a record of the Berlin Philharmonic, which contains a huge flute solo. So we listened to that, and he said, "What do you think?" And we thought, well, no good. The music's rubbish. Because it wasn't in 2/4, it wasn't a march, and we didn't know it. So we gave it the thumbs down. And he said, "Listen, this is the Berlin Philharmonic." And we said, "We don't care who it is. It's no good. It's not as good as the marches we play in the band." But we went back every Saturday. And every Saturday he would play something. And in a way, it was our introduction to classical music. The perfect day in my house is when I wake up around about 7:30, 8 o'clock and do a bit of reading. Sometimes I read the Bible, study it, you know, so that I know what I'm talking about when I encounter the heathens, the pagans, like my kids. Then in the afternoon, I do a bit of practice, do a bit more reading, have dinner, watch a movie, go to bed. I think I've lived here something like, let me see, about 20 years. But I've probably spent 4 years all in all here because I'm mostly on the road. People talk about this being an oasis of calm, but it really isn't, because as soon as you get home, you unpack all these suitcases and you're straight into learning something for the next tour. It's a full-time job being James Galway.
Prego, buon concerto.
Grazie.
Buon concerto.
Okay. Yep.
A lot of great flute music of the early 20th century was written by people like Debussy or Fauré. And it called for a very suggestive, impressionist kind of color palette. If you imagine a Monet painting, the way there's a lot of colors there, but they're slightly blurred and it's subtle. James Galway's sound is more like gold leaf. It's very smooth, it's very brilliant, it's dense. And it's incredibly even as well.
Jimmy's sound is a combination of touching silk, but silk that has volume. Nobody else plays like that. And it's never changed. It's always been that way.
It's not a
an easy instrument, and to be able to do what he does in it is his virtuosity is what distinguishes him. Behind all of that is why we play music. We play music to communicate, and that's where he really puts the cream on the cake, because his music communicates so beautifully.
Any great artist has his or her own voice. We go to hear them for that very reason. It's why we go hear Joshua Bell. It's why we go hear Renee Fleming. It's why we go hear Placido Domingo.
For Philip is my son. He studied in Ireland, in Dublin.
There are those unique people, those geniuses, as it were, in music, who show us something in the music, but we always know who's playing.
My talent, I see it as a gift from God. There's no doubt about that at all. And having been given a gift, it's your job to look after it, to polish it, to make it shine so that other people enjoy it. And you make the giver proud.
One of the few remarks about art that has any strength at all is William Blake, when he said, "All art is unceasing practice."
There is no release from this practicing. Because what you do in the studio is exactly what's going to appear on stage. If you really want to impress everybody, if you really want to enjoy yourself, you have to practice. And you have to practice in such a way that you get better. There's no sense in practicing the same thing every day, doing the same thing and hoping it's going to get better. That's, I believe, a definition of madness. Breathing, breathing, breathing. How's the rest go? Can you play something I know?
What do you know?
The sash.
Jimmy's in London for a recital with pianist and fellow Belfast lad Michael McHale.
He is really the ultimate professional, and he still practices, 4 or 5 hours a day, and it's always just great fun to play with him, because the preparation's done, and when you get out there that it's just all about showing the crowd a good time.
Jimmy's classical music education began in earnest in 1951, aged 11, when his parents paid for lessons with Belfast music teacher Muriel Dawn.
Muriel introduced me to symphonic music. She showed me this embouchure and she said, "Now from here on, for the next month, no flute playing, just doing this." So I was standing in front of the mirror for 5 minutes every day going. I even did it waiting for the bus. I'd stand there going. And I'm sure the people thought that poor kid, he's sort of lost the plot.
The young Galway was clearly a prodigy, but Muriel was convinced that his tuition needed to be stepped up a gear. His big opportunity came when he was just 16. Jimmy received scholarship offers from 2 of London's most prestigious music schools, the Royal College of Music and the Guildhall.
There you go. Hello, Jimmy. How are you?
The Royal College's offer came with room and board at teacher John Francis's house. Jimmy's family immediately accepted.
I got to London to Euston, and John Francis's daughter met me there, and we took the underground. This was a big thing. I was looking around like, what's going on here? The difference was remarkable. 67. Outside my house in Belfast was my bicycle. Outside John's house was his Rolls Royce. It was a step up, I can say. Well, it seems like somebody must have bought it and overhauling it. But my room was right at the top. John Francis, when he was teaching me, he did one outstanding thing. He introduced me to Marcel Moyes. He gave me a recording of Moyes playing a simple piece called Les Millions d'Harlequins. It was so great. And I thought, if somebody was singing this, that's how they would sing it. So I set out to copy him exactly. Of course, I couldn't do it. Years later, I met Moyes, and in one lesson, I said to him, "Did you ever try to play like Philippe Gaubert?" That was his teacher. He said, "Oh, yes, all the time." I said, "And what happened?" He said, "Well, one day, I decided Marcel Moyes is not so bad." You see, he made the step. He studied with his teacher, came to the point where it was no longer happening, moved on. And this is where he became an individual. He became Marcel Moyes. And this is when I listened to Moyes playing many things. I moved on and became James Galway.
I met him one night at St Mary Abbott's school at the bottom end of High Street, Kensington. And I heard this wonderful sound next to me. And we went and had a cup of coffee afterwards, and he has the charm of the devil, as you know, and almost at once we were very good friends, and he was round my house most of the time.
I was mesmerized by William because he was 3 years older than me, and he could play the flute like the devil. I mean, it was amazing. And I thought, this is what I want to do. So everything he did, I tried to do.
Fellow flute prodigy William Bennett was a student at London's other school of music, the Guildhall. His teacher, the renowned flautist Geoffrey Gilbert.
I was always trying to persuade Jimmy to take lessons with Geoffrey Gilbert, who I was firmly convinced was the best teacher that there was.
Geoffrey Gilbert, when I called him for lessons, he said, "Listen, I can't commit to anything until you are free from the Royal College of Music, then we can discuss it. But I don't want to be seen as enticing people away." I couldn't stay anymore with John if I was going to learn with Geoffrey Gilbert, so I had to move out from the family. They didn't take too kindly to that. Millicent was particularly hurt. But it had to be, you know.
What certainly distinguished him was this burning ambition to rise to the top, to rise above it, to be the best guy on the block.
Changing teachers was a bold and risky move. But Jimmy's mission to become the best flute player in the world had officially begun. He graduated quickly from student to professional musician. And for the next 10 years, Jimmy made his mark at the highest levels of the classical music world in London. An early career highlight was playing with the London Symphony Orchestra under legendary American composer and conductor Leonard Bernstein.
First flute. When the second flute enters, will you drop? All right, please, the flute solo.
performance was recorded in London's Festival Hall. Bernstein conducting Jimmy and the LSO is still regarded as one of the greatest concerts ever televised.
London is where I got on the map.
This is our picture gallery that we've just kind of put things here over the years, and here's our wedding picture, cracked.
In 2014, Jimmy and fellow flautist Jeannie celebrated their 30th wedding anniversary.
Oh, this is funny, this photo. That's when we first met. 1978.
They first met when he was playing some concerts in her hometown, New York City.
I have to tell Antonio when we're leaving tomorrow, 4 o'clock rehearsal. He came in with this energy, and he opened up this briefcase and had a gold flute, and no one had gold flutes. And he picked up the flute and he played Carmen Fantasy, and we were like, I said to my girlfriend, do you think we should invite him to come out tonight with us? So I walked right up to him. I said, excuse me, would you like to come out with my girlfriends and I to the pub to have a hamburger? And he said, sure.
Excuse me going, I want to just do a few things.
Go ahead.
A few years after they first met, Jimmy found himself back in New York on tour.
I was playing in the orchestra at Carnegie Hall, and I left, and I'm at the backstage door, and who walks in but him? And he remembered me, and he got my number, and he called me up and invited me to lunch. And he would come with his flute and a box of chocolates, and he'd say to me, do you want to play flute duets? And that's what we did. We'd sit and play flute duets in my kitchen. And that's how our friendship developed. Not everybody marries a James Galway and moves to a foreign country where they can't speak the language, and the third wife, and the kids, and managers that controlled everything.
I did so much practice yesterday, my lips feel like I've been in a fight.
Nice.
Yeah, very. Come on. Normal people don't have a life like this. I often used to think I was like a modern type gypsy. You're doing it all the time. You're all the time working for something. There's no such thing as free time. I don't think I could face it to turn up unprepared and not ready. No Redderdando.
Oh, no, okay.
No.
Because it's here.
No, but it's not original from Mercadante.
With Galway, you get a very wonderful, complete package. There's his directness as a personality. He doesn't ever compromise on his standards. He expects to be very high, both of himself and I think those around him.
It's too much, too much.
Yeah, because it's, I'm sorry. But...
There's a sort of fearlessness, a confidence, a determination that he's going to win through. And I think he always does.
Only the orchestra, poker in the market.
In 1969, aged 29, Jimmy was presented with the opportunity of a lifetime. An audition with the world's greatest orchestra, the Berlin Philharmonic, under world-famous conductor Herbert von Karajan. But the young Irishman arrived a few minutes late, and relations with the orchestra's manager got off to a bad start.
He said, well, we've already had the audition and we've chosen somebody. You don't need to play anyway because the standard is so high. So I told him, you know, if you had any manners at all, you would hear me play because I came all this way. And he replied, yes, but we will pay your fare. I said, I know that. It's in an agreement signed by somebody in your office. Then he disappeared, came back and said, the maestro will hear you. So I walked into the platform where there was a grand piano and the orchestra was sitting in the stalls, a whole orchestra. I then said to the piano player, can we play the Eber concerto? He said, no, this is not a piano audition. Play a Mozart concerto. So I played a D major concerto from memory.
Nein, bitte nicht dort.
Then he said, you're now the solo flutist of the Berlin Philharmonic Orchestra. When can you start? I said, well, I'm not going to start because nobody said, hello, welcome, thank you, how are you? You want me to play with people like this? And I just left. In a letter, he informed me that the orchestra would like me to come and play. They pointed out that the whole orchestra had voted for me, they'd like me to do it. So I said, okay, I'll come and play for a month. It was the most amazing experience in my entire life. This was something different. This was a really great orchestra.
When he got the job at the Berlin Phil, it was terrific for people in London. Everybody felt very proud of him that he'd got there. And also the stories around it made it even better. The mixture of virtuosity and obstinacy and always being his own man.
Karajan was a legend as a conductor who brooked no criticism. He was a kind of Gauleiter, a musical Führer.
I was the only person in the orchestra to whom he referred with the Christian name. He always called me Jimmy, all the time.
For 6 years, Jimmy toured the world and made numerous best-selling recordings with the Berlin Philharmonic. For most musicians, being principal flute with the great Berlin Philharmonic would have been the high point of their careers. But not James Galway. He would soon have an opportunity to claim a much bigger prize, a solo career.
I wanted to have like about a week off to organize a tour of the Bach sonatas in the UK. And we got this all arranged, and because we didn't have a manager, we were taking the whole thing ourselves. And it was a very lucrative thing to do. But Herbert said, oh, I'm doing a Schoenberg violin concerto, and I would like you to be there. So this frustrated me no end because it was right in the middle of this little tour. So the tour had to go by the way. Came to the day, he announces to the orchestra, we're not doing the violin concerto, we're going to do Mozart. A major piano concerto. I mean, I could have killed him, I tell you. I would have killed him if nobody was watching. That was the day that I thought, I'm out of here. So I left the orchestra, that was it. And they called me up a couple of times to ask me to reconsider, which means that Carry-On must have told them, call Jimmy. Because they wouldn't just call me like that if the chief conductor was not going to have me back. But I told them I'm not coming. I don't care what's going on.
Walking away from the Berlin Phil was probably a bigger event than joining the Berlin Phil. Because getting in, well, he was very, very good. He was always going to have a chance. Walking away, because Carry-On wouldn't give him a day off, he thought, come on.
Despite Jimmy's unerring self-belief, building a successful career as a solo flautist was never going to be easy.
For him, I think it would have represented an incredible leap of faith, to launch himself out of that orchestra and that very special job into a career that was far from guaranteed at that time.
The flute is not an obvious instrument for success. It doesn't plumb the great depths of the soul in the way that the fiddle can or the way that the piano can. He must rue the fact that neither Brahms nor Schumann nor Mahler nor Strauss nor Wagner, they all wrote wonderfully when they were writing for the flute inside the orchestra, but none of them wrote music for solo flute. And that is a terrible difficulty for a flautist. What am I going to do? What am I going to play? How can I show people what heart I've got, what soul I've got?
Undaunted, Galway pressed ahead. In his first year as a solo artist, the determined Galway played over 100 concerts.
I think I played everything that was written for the flute. Every flute concerto, I dug it up and played it.
For Galway to take that step and decide to make a career as a solo flutist was certainly bold and brave. But I think he also knew that he could build a career that would be very much based on staying close to what is popular, allowing people to fall in love with the sound of his flute by playing things that are well known.
As his popularity grew, television gave Jimmy an even greater platform.
RCA, they had the idea to put out a little advert in the middle of the gramophone magazine. Here he is playing for you the showcases or the magic flute. This is the man with the golden flute. And this label stuck. They're just sort of a bit in my... Yeah, no,
I think the man with the golden flute it's a great marketing strategy, but it's not very helpful in capturing an artist.
Have you been very busy?
Yeah.
It ties in with the idea that he has created this persona, whether he wanted to or whether it was in some way forced on him by marketing advisors, of somebody who is incredibly positive and who can give something positive to the audience.
Wonderful. Prime Minister, such a pleasure. Wonderful to meet you.
I'm really excited.
Yes, excuse me, James.
James, very, very nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too.
That was, so this is the essential warm-up.
Yes.
There's almost this guarantee that you're going to come away from a James Galway concert with a smile on your face.
Yeah. Today, and then...
For better or worse, that is how James Galway is perceived.
And where is home?
Switzerland.
Switzerland, right. Are you going to look
Can't
beyond
afford to live here.
All right. Well, we're helping. The tax rates are...
With all these Russians, you know.
Oh, no, yeah.
Galway's solo career was going from strength to strength. It seemed as if nothing could go wrong.
I heard this motorcycle approaching at speed, so I stepped off the road onto the bank of the side of the road. And this guy did the same thing. He chased me and he ran over me. And in fact, the bike lifted me physically and deposited me back in the middle of the road.
Galway was rushed to hospital. It was during his recovery that he first heard John Denver's Annie's Song. It had a particular poignancy for Jimmy, as his then wife, who nursed him through his recovery, was also called Annie.
In the event of an accident, it brings people towards God or their higher power. There's nothing like a good scare to make you reevaluate your life. And that's what happened to me. I mean, it really brought my attention to where my maker was and that I should be grateful for the gift that was given me.
Annie's Song was an instant global hit, and Galway became a household name across the world.
When I recorded Annie's Song, everybody thought I'd sold out. I mean, not everybody, but just a few of the more snooty type of critics which exist all through time. But in fact, I hadn't sold out at all. I was just doing what Geely, Caruso, Fritz Kreisler, Rachmaninoff, all these guys all did it. They all crossed over. And the fact that I did it on the flute seemed to get up their noses a bit. Annie's Song made a big difference in the recording business. We could make a deal whereby we would record one crossover recording if they would give us 3 classical recordings. So then I could record the Bach sonatas and all this stuff.
The mountain is high, the valley is low, and you're confused on which way to go. So
Jimmy now embarked on his first American tour. He kicked off with 3 concerts in Los Angeles' legendary venue, the Hollywood Bowl.
When I was doing this, there were a lot of concerts to be played. I mean, I would go to America for, let's say, a month, play 20 concerts and come home with a whole stack of money.
Considering the limitations of the flute, he has crossed the boundaries between classical and popular music fluently, and his success has been immense.
My next guest is that rarest of entertainers, the classical musician with the appeal of a pop star. His recordings of the classics have sold in the millions. He's also had a record in the top 10. Today, he's the world's best known and finest flute player. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. James Galway.
He's flown in on wings of song from Switzerland, bearing with him only his 18-carat gold flute and his extraordinary talent. With the aptly titled, at least for this programme, Pie in the Face Polka, welcome James Galway.
This is your life, and yes, this is Eamon Andrews behind this temporary beard. Now, the reason I'm a busker for the next few minutes is that the man I'm after in real life did busking for a time. And today, he's known as the man with the golden flute. James Galway, world-leading flautist. Tonight, this is your life.
I don't believe it.
Hello, Jimmy. It's a rather queer way of meeting. We have had a very good time together, and One day suddenly you said, I quit. Maybe it was just the time to leave it and embark on the career which you have made and which put you really on the top of everything what we have heard. I mean, we cannot recollect that the flutist had made such a career in such short a time. Goodbye.
Thank you, Herbert von Karajan.
He didn't lose his classical edge. He didn't lose his classical composure. He didn't lose his great talent for classical music. It may even have been enriched and matured in that time. It's the way people perceive you. And they perceive him, it's mad actually. I really think it's a sort of snobbery gone crackers. They perceive you as less good because you want to play other sorts of music besides that which you're already playing. Now, what's the grief? What's the problem?
Just imagine turning up in a festival hall for a concert like this.
Since his breakthrough with Annie's song, Galway has toured the world many times and sold more than 30 million albums. He was one of the first Western soloists to regularly tour China, Japan, and the Far East. His varied career has included playing on several film soundtracks, including the Oscar-winning film Lord of the Rings: Return of the King.
It's all the end of the trilogy. You're all emotional.
He has played the world's finest classical music venues and popularized the flute beyond everyone's expectations. A knighthood bestowed on the maverick Belfast man in 2001 confirmed Sir James Galway's elevation to the pantheon of musical greats.
You know, everybody knows me in this town. You know, the other week I was walking along here and a guy, he looked like he'd just been digging up the road. He walked past me and he said, "James Galway, world's greatest flute player." And then I saw him about 2 weeks later and he just nodded and saluted.
In the last year alone, Jimmy has played 70 concerts across 4 continents. He and his wife Jeannie manage their busy lives from an office in the basement of their Swiss home.
After the concert in...
Will the real James Galway please stand up?
We use, oh God, that's not
Well, no, if they want to recycle, they have to pay for a recycle.
Fair enough.
We are a team. We are a team in many ways. We married 30 years and we travel together. And as my husband says, we have a 24-hour relationship.
See if you can get a few more days in a hotel in Honolulu. Because they're
We've got 9 days.
I know, they're, well, supposing it's 500 a day. It's not very much. Watch this. 4-2.
1-3.
Sometimes I get unnecessarily involved in some of the nitty-gritty. And in that case, I say to Jeannie, look, just you choose what we're going to do.
We think it's a much better way to do than a manager who would just have you on the phone that says, are you going to do, here's your schedule.
When the promoters tell me what to play, usually I cancel the concert. Because I don't want to be bothered being told anymore.
You look incredibly worried. It's a real tough decision.
Yeah. If it was just playing the flute, it'd be fine.
Why don't you just wear your purple suit?
You all right?
It's easy.
Jimmy's getting ready to play his hometown, a rare treat.
White shirt.
And I got the bananas, Antonio. Okay, Antonio?
I have to say that even performing right now, I get the same buzz as I had when I was in Berlin. And the more I play the same piece, the better I get at it. What a great day.
That's funny. It's the first time I've ever seen you bring one flute.
Yeah, well, this one just got me too.
going to play the whole concerto? Or just one movement? I think the whole one.
No, the whole thing, yeah.
Yeah, okay. Then I have to ask you, for this place.
Can we ask the cellos and basses staccato?
Oh, sorry.
Go ahead, take it.
No, that's not important.
You don't know.
It's another conductor. I don't want to speak with him.
Herbert von Karajan.
Galway's ability to almost hide his breath is stunning and virtuosic. He can play for what seems like forever without apparently drawing breath. And he can spin these gorgeous legato lines with this pure, gleaming sound that has very little of the human breath in it.
If we can get them to play this more legato.
So that they seem to be as smooth flowing as in a really great opera singer.
I remember doing Flight of the Bumblebee with him, and it was as if we were out to set a track record here. The idea was, I can play this faster than anybody else and still get all the notes, and he did. But virtuosity also encompasses matters like breathing, phrasing, the whole package. To me, that's what makes him so unique.
In contemporary music, increasingly there are composers who want more of that audible breath, sometimes allowing the human to show through the instrumental in a way that in Galway is all gold leaf and it's all stunning, but it's almost a little too even. There's something very expressive about a player who will hold a long note with no vibrato and then just at the very end give a little flutter as if to sort of say, I'm insisting on this note, or I'm yearning, or I'm pleading with this note. So there's something to be said for not being as evenly brilliant, vibrant, and gleaming as Galway sound is.
His wife Jeannie, herself an accomplished flautist, is joining him on stage for part of tonight's performance.
Swing with that?
Yeah, that's a funny thing. Beards actually do look a bit better when you comb them.
Yes, everything looks better when you comb it, James.
Almighty God, our Heavenly Father, we ask you to be with us in this concert tonight. Give us the strength and concentration to do our best. And we ask you to bless the whole thing. In Jesus' name, amen.
Preciseness he has between the rhythm and the tonguing, and then he has the expression, and he just leans on that a little bit. It's just this musicality that just flows, and then taken on an instrument that I know personally what challenges it brings. I'm amazed. It's like the first time, really.
I've been thinking recently that gradually it will come to the point where I won't be able to play the way I do now. And when this point comes, I will simply stop. But until it does, I'm going to enjoy doing it. And I really enjoy doing it because I think, in a way, I'm like a crusader on the stage, preparing the way for the kids.
Wonderful. What a nice audience.
No smoking.
James.
Suppose a cigar's out of the question.
James, no. It's out of the question.
Aged 75, Galway now devotes increasing amounts of time to teaching.
Cadenza was good.
Now in its 25th year, the Galway Flute Festival is held in a convent just across the lake from Jimmy's home in Switzerland. The connection between singing and playing, which Jimmy first discovered through his early influence Marcel Moyes, remains at the heart of Galway's teaching ethos.
We have a warm-up of singing so that they get the hang of where their body should be and how their body should react to make the best sound.
This is where Galway's burning passion now lies. Passing a lifetime of experience and knowledge on to the next generation of top-class flute players.
It's the job of a teacher to teach them how to get to the next level, what to do. How are you going to make this happen? How are you going to play the Martinu Sonata better so that it actually sounds better?
This is something he's done for a very long time. Each one of them doesn't want to imitate him. They can't imitate him. They have to learn how to be themselves.
Good posture breeds good breathing, right? If you don't have it, your breath is not going to work. Here we go. Breathe in.
It's very important that we leave a mark. He has a very natural approach to playing the flute, but yet he's figured out every aspect of it. And we have got to put this down for future generations.
Okay. Everybody has a conception of what they should sound like. And I have my own conception. It's based a lot on listening to singers, because when people sing, they form the tone, they form the sound. When flute players do it, they just play and blow. But I play and try and form the sound. Yeah, but you don't understand that. When she's singing, oh, dee dee, ha, da 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 dee, dee. It's not da ding ding. You see? You know, something like this.
I think in my flute playing, there has been a before and after since I started studying with him. So every time I have new difficulties to face, I go with him and he helps me.
Do you understand what I mean? Right. Okay, let me hear it again. Play the first note, top F. My legacy, as it stands, is recorded on 64 CDs. And as well as that, I would really like to leave a mark as a teacher.
Sir James's goal is just to make sure that so many young people have music as a part of their lives. So I think what he's going to leave behind is a school of thought that reminds us in the 21st century why music still matters.
Looking at my career and what it took to get there is an interesting thing to do from time to time. And I often thought my family would have been much better off if I had stayed at home and become a teacher. But then when I look at some of my other friends who brought their kids and homeschooled them on the road and things like this, I don't think they're any better off. So I think I wouldn't change anything, except I would be more generous with my time towards my family and towards my friends.
Jimmy's in Dublin, where he's about to be honoured with a Lifetime Achievement Award.
I'm delighted to be here with you this evening. This is really very special. And if I was asked to describe James Galway, I would say he is the music, what Seamus Heaney is the literature.
I do not believe we will ever have another Jimmy Galway. He's too unique a presence in so many different ways.
James Galway, flautist, is something that will be remembered as one of the main features of musical life in the second half of the 20th century and right on now until 2014, 2015.
Here it is, the greatest tune on earth.
He's created an individual sound which marks him out as one of the great musicians of the age.
Being from the north of Ireland is a very difficult thing because on the one hand you're as Irish as anybody, and on the second hand you have a British education thrown in. It doesn't stop me enjoying the Irishness that I've inherited. When I go to Dublin, I feel just as much at home there as I do in Cork or in Belfast or Derry. It's Ireland and I'm Irish. There's nothing you can do about that. I'm not sure how many flutes I have. I'd have to have a look at the insurance docket. They're all insured, and normally we shove them in the bank, but we got them out especially for you. And this is where we keep them when they're here in the house. And this one, I believe, is 24 carat.
Known to friends and family as Jimmy, Galway has made Switzerland his home for the past 40 years. He's been married 3 times and has 4 grown-up children. For the last 20 years, Galway and his third wife, Jeannie, have lived in Megan. Their beautiful house overlooks Lake Lucerne, a long way from the streets of his childhood. Galway was born in Belfast in 1939 at the outbreak of the Second World War. He was the eldest of 2 sons. His father found occasional work at the shipyard, and his mother was a winder in the local spinning mill. Both parents shared a love of music. Sir James Galway is widely regarded as the greatest flute player of the 20th century.
It's really difficult to know what separates the geniuses from the rest. All I know is that for some reason, he's on this planet to do good.
With James Galway, there is a rare confluence of tremendous skill and ability. You talk to flutists, and whether they like the way he plays or not, they will say he is a phenomenon. He is so gifted. He has such a facility with the instrument that it's just extraordinary.
Galway has the complete package, not just as a musician, but as a communicator. He rarely tells it like it is. He's somebody who I think anybody can relate to.
His crossover into the world of pop music shocked his peers, but made him a global superstar.
James Galway has crossed all those frontiers and gone beyond because he's a world musician. There are not too many of them, but he's a world musician.
This is the story of the boy from Belfast who shook up the classical music world and won.
That sort of love, he's in love with it, and he has always been. This is the great love affair, and he can't leave it alone. He's infatuated with it. His last breath will be blowing a flute. Music.
The first stage when I learned with my Uncle Joe, he taught me all the marching band tunes, you know, the first flute bands that we played in Belfast. And that was like the beginning for me. I thought this was great, you know, get out there and play the flute with all these drums and stuff.
The 1950s was a quiet time politically in Northern Ireland, and the flute band scene gave hundreds of young boys like Jimmy an opportunity to develop their musical skills.
Saturday was always a big day because there we were free. One day we were walking down the high street and we saw this notice and it said Atlantic Records. So we went in. The proprietor, owner and promoter was Solly Lipchitz. And Solly took one look at us and said, "What are you guys doing?" And he said, "Oh, we're just looking around." He said, "What?" And immediately he said, "Well, what do you play?" I don't know why he knew we played anything. And we all said, "We played the flute." And he said, "Okay, sit down, I'll play your record." So he played us a record of the Berlin Philharmonic, which contains a huge flute solo. So we listened to that, and he said, "What do you think?" And we thought, well, no good. The music's rubbish, because it wasn't in 2/4, it wasn't a march, and we didn't know it. So we gave it the thumbs. The music business was in our family. My mother played the piano, and my dad played the piano, accordion, and the flute, of course. My dad was really very passionate about Strauss waltzes. Sometimes I wondered if I was living in Belfast or Vienna, because my dad was playing all these waltzes on the accordion and my mum played on the piano. This is my dad. But I never thought about this before. I wonder if this is the bandmaster who would be my grandfather. My granddad was the flute player in the family at the time. He was the teacher or the bandmaster of a big band called the Apprentice Boys. But they ceased to function when Adolf threw a bomb on their band room, and that was the end of that. I decided I was going to learn the flute, but I wasn't going to learn it from my dad, because at the age of 9, I thought I was 15 and was not talking to my dad. And so I learned it with my Uncle Joe, which was a much nicer experience.
From very early age, James Galway was an extraordinary boy. I mean, he was this boy in a very working class, honourably poor background. But he just wanted to play. Well, that's odd, to be as dedicated to it. Not football, not knocking around. He wanted to play, he wanted to talk with his pals, but what did he want to talk about?
Down, and he said, "Listen, this is the Berlin Philharmonic." We said, "We don't care who it is. It's no good. It's not as good as the marches we play in the band." But we went back every Saturday And every Saturday he would play something. And in a way, it was our introduction to classical music. The perfect day in my house is when I wake up around about 7:30, 8 o'clock, and do a bit of reading. Sometimes I read the Bible, study it, you know, so that I know what I'm talking about when I encounter the heathens, the pagans, like my kids. Then in the afternoon, I do a bit of practice, do a bit more reading, have dinner, watch a movie, go to bed. I think I've lived here something like, let me see, about 20 years. But I've probably spent 4 years all in all here because I'm mostly on the road. People talk about this being an oasis of calm, but it really isn't, because as soon as you get home, you unpack all these suitcases and you're straight into learning something for the next tour. It's a full-time job being James Galway.
Prego, buon concerto.